today's episode of Thoughts on Tenerife, we've got Roger and Jane. Now, this is an interesting story because they bought a property off plan. That's a brand new property. No one had ever lived in it before. How long ago was that then, you guys?
Well, we moved in July 2017, but we first we were looking seriously with you, Simon, the summer before that. But that was still at the time not really seriously looking. We were just
right. That's the funny thing.
We had an idea and a view, and if you remember, we said, "No, it's not serious, Simon. Don't invest too much time in this." But we're serious, and if you find the perfect place for us, we'll move heaven and earth to do it.
Right.
And then, of course, you did find something perfect for us, and that escalated everything for us.
It did.
So I think we first saw it properly in about, was it June or was it a bit later in October 2016?
I think it was October, yeah.
Right,
and we'd seen it on the internet,
yeah.
The drawings, hadn't we?
And it was a building site, basically, at that point, wasn't it? It was breeze blocks when you took us around for the first time.
Yeah.
We'd seen lots of diagrams and drawings, of course, and everything looked wonderful. But when you're actually standing in a structure with lots of health and safety gear on, then you can start to understand what it may look like.
We were wearing our hard hats, weren't we?
We were looking super attractive in hard hats. And I remember being, because of course this is the most important thing, being highly irritated at not being able to wear my flip-flops.
Yes.
Because I had to wear either hard shoes or trainers which
yeah.
go with my outfit, which was highly irritating. But small.
You survived.
Small things I had to deal with.
I was annoyed that I couldn't wear my high heels as well.
It was great, and it was really good to have you there because obviously your Spanish is great, and there were lots of questions that had to be asked at the time. We didn't really know what to ask, how to ask them. So it was really good to have you there as that mediator, so to speak.
Thank you. So, so another question then for me would be, how did you start thinking? All right, so you thought, right, okay, I'd love to buy a property abroad, whether it's Tenerife or Spain or another country. But how did you start your search process? What sort of internet things? I guess probably, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I suppose the initial idea of wanting to buy somewhere else came from just gradually falling in love with, first of all, small islands. Before we discovered Tenerife many years ago, we used to have our one main week away in Malta all the time, and that was always very pleasant. But then the weather kept changing at different times of the year, and it wasn't as reliable.
As weather does.
Yeah, we came to Tenerife for our honeymoon and just fell in love with it gradually, year after year after year. That became the holiday destination. And casual discussions about this would be a lovely place to come and spend a lot more time turned into the natural, what if we had a place out here? Could we do that? How would we do that? So that was the first part of the answer. And then it was a matter of, okay, well, we love Tenerife, but we only know the bits that we've been to, which were...
Other than I knew the bits that I'd been partying when I was 18.
Yeah.
So we knew about the party side of it, but we didn't really know anything other than the 5-star hotel, 4 or 5-star hotel.
It's still broadly all on the southwest side. And the question then is, well, where on the island or even on other Canaries should we be looking? So web research, yes, to look into other islands, and you quickly find that Tenerife is biggest, most populated, but has so much of everything. If you want to find a place that is in a rural environment where you won't see any neighbours for miles around, or if you want to be in a complex with a community built, everything exists in that spectrum. So we realised that the island was right for Tenerife, that we'd almost luckily stumbled across through a first holiday many years ago.
First holiday?
Honeymoon, probably, yes. And then it was a matter of understanding the island and where things are. Because one of the first frustrating things when you start looking at estate agent sites, including Simon's as well, we stumbled across initially, is you don't know where the areas are. So you see all these names all the time, and they're all, I don't mean foreign in that way, but they all are
foreign to you.
Unknown to you. So initially I just found a map with all the key town sites on to then plot where things were. Right. I remember plotting a little graph of where we did and didn't want to be. And when one of the first things I think we said to you, Simon, was we already discovered by that point we wanted to be no more than a kilometre away from the sea, so that we were still close enough to wander down to towns and restaurants and things, but also along the stretch that went from Los Cristianos all the way through to La Caleta.
But to be fair, if people weren't as detail oriented as you,
what are you suggesting?
Let's just say Simon would have done that for us.
Yes, I'm sure.
Because he would have just said, okay, what do you want, what don't you want? And most people wouldn't put the amount of effort in and detail in.
It's nice to have, I agree, Jane. It's nice to have clients that know what they want and then can just say, right, there's the list.
Of course,
find
but not
something.
everybody wanted to do that. I mean, if it would be me on my own, Simon, let's be honest, you know damn well I wouldn't have done that. I'd have said, Simon, this is what I want. Can you find it for me?
Yeah.
But so, and that's possibly quite common. I don't know, but I know you can do
But
that.
it's easy to see beautiful looking properties and amazing value for money, and then you eventually find out where it is, and you go, "Oh, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's halfway up a mountain,
Exactly.
or it's on completely the wrong side for us, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be."
Good to eliminate places.
So that really, when I mapped out everything, even in my mind, and knew those areas, that really sped up the looking process.
Exactly. Yeah, great. Okay, so now then, think back then as to when you were first thinking about, we're going to now buy something. What was your biggest fear, do you think?
Oh, that's put us on the spot a bit. Biggest fear.
Did you have something in the back of your mind that you thought, if this doesn't work out?
Remember, but I think probably my biggest fear would have been making the wrong decision. So I'm quite impulsive. Roger is not impulsive, and I'm very much. When we've looked for houses before in England, I'm very much swayed by an immediate impression of of a place, and so I would have been frightened, I think, of making the wrong decision, and then because I wouldn't have considered where it was, how close it was to facilities that we needed, etc. Whereas Roger is in our partnership. Roger's the one that does all that, and I just say that's basically what we want. I love that. Will it work? So that would have been my big fear. I don't know if that works.
Yeah,
same for you.
I think it's completely different for me. For me, it was more on the finance side of things for two reasons. One, we'd already met you by that time, so we were very happy with you. We'd got to know and trusted name and all the rest of it. And you'd ferried us around looking at various different properties. So we had no doubts there. But to finance the purchase, we looked into things, and I work in financial services in the UK. So we looked into mortgages in Spain, in Tenerife, and decided there was nowhere near as much choice as there is in the UK. Right. So decided to remortgage in the UK and buy cash in Tenerife, which is what we ended up doing. Yeah. So there was a little bit of a question mark, because we went, as we've always done when we bought houses, right to the top of our budget. There was a little bit of a question mark about, will the estate agent back in the UK value our property at the right amount? A bit of a party when he did. And then secondly, we used the solicitor who's based in Tenerife. Totally would recommend him, Carlos at CDF Lawyers. Simon had actually recommended us, and we had a few doubts, Simon, about that, because we thought at the time you relatively new, although we trusted you. Yeah. We thought, well, is Simon somehow in cahoots with Carlos? So we did our own research again.
Cahoots sounds very close to dagger, doesn't it?
But that was, a thought, and we engaged with Carlos and got lots of good feedback back from him. He was the one solicitor who costed everything together, whereas lots of other solicitors, every time we asked them, does this include XYZ, a Spanish will, for instance, or something like that, the answer would come back saying, oh, no, that's an extra X hundred more euros. And Carlos had said, no, that's the price I've given you is everything, and kept saying that every time we went back to a question. But then we still hadn't met him face to face. And when we were going through the buying process, we transferred all the funds to his client account before we met him. I was a little bit nervous. We've got to take some risks in life, and we'd looked him up, checked his credentials and all the rest of it, and everything obviously all worked really well. But those were perhaps some of the more nervy times. It
was fine. Yeah,
okay. Is there anything that you thought that would have been quite difficult to do, but actually ended up being really easy?
That's a question. I can think of things that I thought would be easier, the opposite way around.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Well, I know that, which isn't meant to be a negative thing. It's more just an observation. We knew that actually moving into the house was going to be quite challenging in the sense that it's an empty house. It was a new property. What we hadn't really factored in was how difficult that would be, because we took 2 weeks out. We decided we don't normally do a 2-week holiday. We had a 2-week time to move in. But what we hadn't really factored in was how much physical work would be involved. And it was fine, we're healthy and we managed, we're fit enough to do it. But even things like in the UK, if you buy a new property, you don't arrive through the front door, and have all the wires hanging down from the ceiling. Whereas you literally start it. It's just the cleanest slate ever. You're having to fit lights. You're having to fit curtain poles. Every single thing needs fitting. So for that first week, we worked ourselves to death, and Roger became an expert electrician overnight. And we were reading via our mobile phone, the light from our mobile phones for the first few nights, and it was all great fun and we loved it, but we were completely unaware of how exhausted we'd be. We were the tiredest we've ever been, weren't we, at the end of those 2 weeks? So I know it's the opposite of what you asked, Simon, but that was something that just kind of
that's a good one, because you thought it would be, that'd be right, we'll just move in, and it ends up
move our furniture in and we'll be fine, and it really wasn't.
Great fun though, wouldn't it?
It was good. No, we loved it,
and much happier having bought a property that was a complete blank canvas and had to be built from scratch. And I guess my answer to your question would be in a similar light. It was when we decided, and you do all the finance and everything sort of is going through, and you're going, okay, we're going to buy a house. Right, now we've got to organise all the furniture. When you're on holiday in Tenerife and you're staying in the lovely hotels on the seafront and so forth, you don't tend to take a day trip out to DIY stores and furniture shops. No. So with a little bit of involvement with local Tenerife Facebook groups and things like that, you can quickly get some good answers back from people who will advise you where the best furniture shops are locally or further afield in Santa Cruz and so forth. Again, it was a lovely experience to try and find and visit those ones. Once we'd explored a little, it became a lot easier, certainly. So I'm going to name drop a few shops now. We're not sponsored or anything, but having an IKEA on the doorstep with the IKEA Punto just up the road from us in Los Cristianos, and the main shop in Santa Cruz is good. Leroy Merlin's is another big store to go for the DIY sort of equivalents of a B&Q in the UK.
Oh, and also,
and so many furniture shops.
The one thing that was easier, I've just thought of the answer to your original question, Simon, that was easier. Well, you just mentioned stores. We knew we were going to have to buy beds locally, obviously. We didn't have any beds in the house, and we found just down the hill from where, and you'll know where it is, Simon, from us, a little furniture store called Meuble for You, the little bed store. Yeah, and it's a little underground store. The little Spanish chap in there, sweet as a button, doesn't speak a word of English. We basically ordered all the beds we needed from him, thinking, oh God, is it going to arrive in time on the day they say? We have no idea if we got our order across properly. And bless them, they turned up exactly when they said they would. They managed to hoik the beds up into the bedroom. The guys were fantastic. They unpacked everything, took their rubbish away, and it was absolutely brilliant, wasn't it? We couldn't recommend them enough.
Most sensible people moving into a completely empty house would stay in a hotel for a couple of days first. We didn't do that. We booked the earliest flight out that day. First day that we took the keys, we bought a couple of things on the way from the airport.
A fan.
Didn't we?
That's the main thing.
From one of the electrical stores, can't remember the name of it now, one of the electrical stores. Saw the solicitor, picked up the keys, went to the house. We'd ordered a load of furnishings, stuff like that from John Lewis International Delivery. We, at the end of the day, to cut the story long, we'd had our entire John Lewis delivery, something like 17 boxes of stuff, pillows, everything. The beds had arrived, the mattresses, and we had a place to sleep that night. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it was good. It worked out well. It was we had somewhere to sleep.
Maybe another time we might have booked the hotel option. But
it was a bit mad.
Next time.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I've got two more questions for you guys. Is there something that you think you would have preferred to have done differently? Is there something that you think to yourself, yeah, well, if you'd have done that, or if we'd have done that first, it would have been a lot easier, or did everything just pretty much go as you thought it would anyway?
I think based on what you've just said, that I think I would want to do it differently by doing either staying in a hotel or doing it in stages. So going in for one visit, putting in the lighting, getting the very basics in, and then going and having a holiday.
Yeah, I might have
maybe
when we moved into a complex with another 29 new houses. Sure. Most of the people who bought there, and it's a mix of Spanish residents and people like us who have it as a holiday home, all different nationalities, and most people that wasn't their first purchase. They'd already had a house on the island somewhere, and they were just moving down because it was a great complex. And most of those folks, therefore, already knew handymen, basically. And that would be the one thing I'd do differently. Whilst I fancy myself and enjoy DIY, when it's flat out, when you're waking up at 7 in the morning
endless.
And you're putting up back furniture, and at 9 at night you're still drilling holes in the wall, it would pull on. And another time I'd go, let's just find a handyman to do some of this.
And stay in a hotel.
Yeah, Roger's right there. And there was one point when we realised we pushed ourselves too far. When Roger was so tired. You were actually delirious at one point, weren't you? You were so tired, you just couldn't even focus on anything. So I had to say, enough now.
That is it.
It was too much, but it was fun. We get over it. It's all good.
And the other little tip, moving into, as most properties will be, hard floor surfaces, and we're used to trudging around on carpet floors in the UK all the time, of course. And it's amazing how little tolerance a bare foot has on hard floors. So you quickly discover that slippers are an essential item going around most homes.
We did buy slippers in that first few days, didn't we? Because our feet were absolutely killing us.
Our feet were cracking
Yeah,
out.
good point. I've
It
forgotten that.
was really quite sore, and you just don't realise that when you're doing it day
Running
to day.
around like that. Right. So my last question for you guys is: okay, so your best friends or a family member or something like that decided they're going to buy a place abroad, and what's your one top tip? You can have one each. One top tip.
Well, I'll go first. My top tip, without a shadow of a doubt, just to blow some smoke up your proverbial, is the sole reason that we came to contact you in the first place was your website and your videos.
Right,
without
okay.
a shadow of a doubt, having never bought a property outside of the UK before, the videos that you have put on your website about the whole process were outstanding. There was nothing else on the web that would do that. There's plenty of blogs.
Gosh, you said that without even being paid to say
No,
it.
the check's in the post. Don't worry.
Yeah, but it's genuinely true. There's plenty of other good websites, and there's a solicitor, Janet's. What's Janet's name? The solicitor's website.
I don't think she's a lawyer, but I know what you mean, though. Yeah.
Just an expert in that area. Yeah.
She has some great information about Tenerife generally, but in terms of the buying process and things you need to consider, and just understanding the costs involved, how different the legal process is, all those things. It was why we came to you in the first place, because this is someone who's just reached out, has understood the thought process that everyone should be going through, and the answers were all there, and it was absolutely great.
Thank you very much. Jane, your top tip, but not buying slippers. That is not a top tip.
Oh, okay then. Well, I've got nothing to say then. No. The only thing which I failed a bit miserably in the last year or so, but the only thing I would say is it's really useful to learn a little bit of Spanish.
Good.
Because I have stopped my lessons recently because I was doing other things, but I'm going to try and get back to it, and Roger's doing really well with his Spanish. But even in those early days, we wanted to try as best we could to communicate with people in the DIY stores and anybody else that we came across as best we could in the pidgin Spanish that we could, because as you will know very well, Simon, it's so appreciated by the locals, and we found that the service was outstanding because people appreciated what we were doing, making an effort. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I suppose not living here doesn't help, does it? Of course, if you live here, then of course that way, then you can practice a lot more. So you both have busy lives, and you get on with your lives, don't you? So
no, I think if we lived there permanently, or if we were there at least half the year, I know that I would be pretty good pretty soon. I just don't like that sort of formal learning, but it's still worth just picking up a few odd words and trying to throw a few sentences together, even if you don't have the time to learn it properly. It does make a big difference, doesn't it? Even in the restaurants, the waiters love it. So.
Yeah, that's very nice of you. So really, I really want to say thank you very much, both. It's been, I appreciate it a lot, and I'm sure the people that watch the video will appreciate it as well. So thanks very much, and in a small little nod to your Spanish learning, hasta luego.
Hasta luego.
Adios. Ciao.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.